Let's look over the agenda. And I'm sorry, is Commissioner Presley going to be here? Oh, he is here, okay. Let's wait just a moment for, I thought we had everyone, but not quite yet. Uh-oh. All right, we're going to call the meeting to order. Let's just look at the agenda real quick. We're going to have an update on the opioid settlement, the Town of Weaverville Stormwater Intergovernmental Agreement, Workforce Development Board Consolidation discussion, and have a presentation about the composting drop-off site pilot project. If we are able to get through these items and we have time, Commissioner Sloan requested some time to talk about a proposal that has originated from the eastern band of the Cherokee regarding the naming of a location inside the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. So you still want to talk about that today if we have time?
Correct. If we have time, that'd be great. And everyone has a copy of the resolution at your station.
Okay. Are there any other issues that commissioners would like to discuss at the briefing meeting today? All right, great. Are there any questions about any items on the regular agenda this evening? All right, well, let's go ahead and jump into the staff updates. And the first one is the opioid settlement planning update.
Hello, I'm Victoria Reichard, Behavioral Health Manager.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. Today I'm going to be sharing currently where we are in the planning process and the feedback that we've received from the community. This is not to say it has been an exhaustive process, but this is the preliminary feedback to guide initial planning. While I'm sharing, I may ask you all some questions, feedback. If there's anything that you're hearing from the community, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to pause. I'd like to even get your input about our impact, where we hope to make an impact, and if there's anything missing. So just a review of our planning process, what we've outlined. We continue to collect proximate community feedback and feedback from the Behavioral Health Justice Collaborative regarding priorities for initial use of the settlement funds and future visioning. A project team is beginning to work through the details regarding the strategies to be funded based on feedback so far. Next month, we anticipate to be bringing a draft financial plan to the board for input to then present a final recommendation for approval in September. We have introduced our ongoing strategic plan, which outlines how we continue to prioritize settlement funds over the course of the next 17 years, using community engagement and data to inform those decisions. And this should begin in September, November of this year. Here we have a visual of what funding looks like over the next 7 fiscal years, as money will be received each summer and ready to be expended during the fiscal year. From fiscal year 27 through 2039, funds will remain at less than $1 million. So it'll be important for us to consider various funding options to maintain necessary and foundational services that are providing positive impacts and our community wants to sustain. Settlement funds can then further support gaps within our system and provide specialty and/or innovative supports for those most difficult to reach. We continue to explore how the county's strategic plan aligns with initiatives that the opioid settlement funds could support, as well as keeping informed about community initiatives, funds coming from the state through grants and through local LME MCO via health, and the strategies they are prioritizing to address the epidemic. To also mention, the City of Asheville has been approved for a grant to hire a coordinator to plan for the $1.5 million of settlement funds they will receive. This person will be sitting under the Homeless Division within the Community and Economic Development Department, and we will be working closely together through the planning process to strategize those funds. And this again is a reminder of the strategies approved through the Memorandum of Agreement. We are narrowing down which strategies can have the biggest impact based on current needs. But through further collaborative strategic planning, we'll be able to expand to strategies outside of this list in order to focus on the unique needs of our county. Please keep in mind that currently, as we are taking community feedback, we are structuring how they fit under the strategies outlined within the MOA. Many of these strategies overlap, and so because one strategy isn't prioritized does not mean a program would not get support. So for example, recovery support services could cover the costs of peer supports or care navigators within reentry programs, syringe service programs, post-overdose response teams. Supporting evidence-based addiction treatment could also include treatment for incarcerated persons. There we go. So one way that feedback was gathered was through a survey on our public input page, which was available from April 13th to May 25th. Participants were asked to rank a list of 7 strategies in the order they felt were most important for Buncombe County to invest opioid settlement dollars. This link was emailed to various community groups that consisted primarily of the helping community, that included many with lived experience and those having day-to-day interactions with people impacted by the opioid epidemic. This bar chart looks at the average ranking for each strategy. So for example, if one person ranked a strategy as their first choice and another person ranked that same strategy as their third choice, the strategy's ranking would be 2. Items listed as other included harm reduction services, which also falls in line with the syringe service program, money to increase the length of stay in inpatient treatment, and initiatives targeted to adolescents, even intensive outpatient. As one commenter mentioned, there is not one definitive solution to solving this pandemic of the opioid crisis. It takes the whole community and all of these needs getting attention to stop more people from dying. Our other venue of gathering proximate community feedback is through the Behavioral Health Justice Collaborative, where a diverse group of community stakeholders identified problems, needs, and barriers in our community, and then identified the immediate priorities for settlement funding. There were also conversations regarding ideas to better support our community that looks more to the root causes, addresses prevention, and mitigating the downstream impacts to our community. In our May Behavioral Health Justice Collaborative, we continue to dive deeper in identifying strategies to meet the needs of the community and those that aligned with the Memorandum of Agreement. Reflecting on previous meeting outputs as well as the public input page results, these were items initially identified. There was consensus of the group that sustaining current programs would be a priority if current funding is not covering the need and/or is expiring, such as our post-overdose response, syringe services, and addiction treatment in the detention center. And to use this time to just share some examples to get you all thinking about what are potential strategies that we may want to prioritize this initial moment is through various efforts within the community to increase access to peer supports. We have been seeing an increase in client engagement and following up on outpatient treatment and inpatient treatment. Peer supports can help someone access support such as transportation to appointments, being that connection needed to wait till there is a spot available to start treatment, or be a point of contact when they are ready to access treatment, and then linking clients to other services and supports. Our rural partners have shared that access to treatment is a challenge due to there not being resources close to home and having limited transportation options. Being able to assess geographic needs and partnering with surrounding counties that may have services more accessible to where a Buncombe County resident resides may be one avenue in expanding access to care. Housing has been a challenge for many in our community, and for those working through recovery, we know that this type of transitional housing can be an important factor in sustaining those recovery efforts. Frequently, the cost can be prohibitive or there are barriers to get in, all the while someone is trying to get stable mentally and physically, and then working on identifying employment opportunities and building the skills needed to be recruited. I'm curious if there's anything that you all have that might stand out that you've been hearing from your constituents that we want to make sure we're taking into account.
I don't know if there's any comments right at this time, but thank you for asking.
Don't know if my battery's getting low. The next part that I was going to touch on is our impact measures and what we're hoping to accomplish through the use of opioid settlement dollars. The first one was increase availability, timeliness, and accessibility of treatment services, increase the number of medical, clinical, and peer support professionals working in local treatment services, decrease homelessness in the community, reach areas, individuals, there we go, populations that are not currently served. And so instead of reading through all that, now that you have that in front, in our the Behavioral Health Justice Collaborative, we identified the selection criteria and weighted them. So we looked at how important are some of these impacts in relation to one another, and then looked at potential strategies and what is the likelihood that we think this strategy would have an impact. So at the bottom, you see some of our strategies are listed based on what program strategy would provide the most impact. So again, one other just thought was if you all had any other areas of impact that you think would be important to consider that might have been left out.
I guess, maybe one question I have is, as our commission started dedicating more attention to these issues several years ago, I mean, one of the things that I think we were all struck by was just the data around just like the magnitude of the, opioids prescribed in the community on an annual basis, and just huge amount. And of course, they have a legitimate medical role, but just the enormous volume made it a lot easier to understand how a real high percentage of these end up being used for, folks who have addiction. They lead to addictions and feed the addictions. And so, I don't know, just as part of this conversation, I guess I would like to continue to learn more about how things are going in terms of the trends around efforts to address the prescribing of these legal medications, but which are very, very addictive and very dangerous. So that would be one question I would have.
Okay, great.
And in relation to that, that's one thing when I was looking over all this information, which I really appreciate the level of detail that you're sharing with us, was kind of that preventative lens. I know you mentioned that early on, and I think you have it a few years down the road, but I would really love for us to be looking at that all along, because it seems really, clearly it's important that we're addressing where people are, but we'd really like to impact the fact that people don't get started down this road.
Right. And that's where we are partnering with different groups that are looking at that. And we were just having the conversation as it is very important. We don't want to rush because it's a very systemic, right, deep. There's still some high-level things, so that is still part of our conversation. How can we still maybe educate? How can we maybe incorporate some of that work even with our peer supports and with family members? But yes, that we are not too far behind in really focusing on the prevention, but thank you. Okay. And so next steps that the board can expect, and again, this is not working, is incorporating information we have now. We will be meeting with a time-limited project team on a weekly basis to draft a financial plan for initial use of funds by further defining the strategies, allotting dollar amounts, and the time frame to be funded. So one thing I want to make you all aware of, the MOA expects at the least that the board approves a strategy, a dollar amount, and a time frame for funds to be spent. As you can imagine, right, it's never too short of a time to do something, but we also want to be planful. So our thoughts are we're going to share with you all a strategy, a dollar amount, and a time frame. And then through September to December, we will continue to kind of fine tune what does that look like and share with you all what our final impact measures and where those may be allotted. So we're not coming to you to say XYZ is being agency, program as maybe being funded, but we're going to come back and say recovery support services. We're going to put $200,000 to this towards this amount. And so my plan is to then come back after we've gotten your approval. It also gives us some boundaries to operate because we can go into a lot of different directions to really then narrow in and then continue this process for fiscal year '24 and further planning. But I wanted to make sure that you all were comfortable with that high level approval of strategy, dollar amount, and time frame.
And again, when did you say you plan to bring that back to us?
So we will plan to bring a draft in August, and then the final for approval in September. And then we're planning for fund allocation by January of 2023. That means money is being distributed to those programs or services or initiatives that support that strategy.
So we don't usually vote at these briefing meetings, but I'm not hearing any concerns about the proposal, so sounds positive. Yeah.
Yep. Didn't want to come on August and you're like, I thought she was going to give more. But obviously, if you have any more questions in August, then we can have that prepared for September.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, thank you all.
All right, thank you so much. All right, the next item on the agenda is the Town of Weaverville Stormwater Intergovernmental Agreement.
Hi, I'm Victoria Hoyland. I am the Stormwater Administrator here with the county. And how do I get the slideshow started? Do I do that? Oh, perfect. So this is a very long name, but essentially I'm talking to you today about an interlocal agreement that we have with the Town of Weaverville, where we provide erosion control and stormwater permitting services for their development projects within their jurisdiction. We do this for several municipalities throughout the county, and they are one of them. I'm going to attempt to advance. Next. We can just keep.
I'll just do brief advocacy for the overhead projector. I think we should maybe bring it back because it worked every time. So I'm just brainstorming right here. So.
Lillian broke it. Thank you, thank you, Brian.
If you guys are okay with it, we can just keep going. It's we don't necessarily need that slide. The Town of Weaverville has a stormwater permit from the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality, as many municipalities do. And part of that permit requires them to ensure that erosion control permitting, which regulates the stormwater runoff during construction, and then the post-construction stormwater management, which regulates the stormwater runoff after the construction is completed, they're required to provide adequate permitting services and ensure that those developments are adequately regulated per state regulations. Now, the town of Weaverville, since the adoption of, pretty much since the beginning of the stormwater ordinance here in Buncombe County, has relied on the county to provide those services. So we have provided those services for them within their jurisdiction. Recently, the Department of Environmental Quality has been doing audits of a lot of these communities and their permitting programs. And in the audit, they identified that the existing memorandum of understanding with the town, between the town and the county, was not sufficient to meet their needs. And so they just need a more robust agreement in place. It doesn't change the nature of the relationship, doesn't change the services that we are providing in any substantive manner. It mainly just clarifies things. We also used it as an opportunity to clarify a few questions that we had on our end in administering the ordinance on their effect. So it's basically just a more robust and clarified agreement between us and the town.
And so we need to approve it.
The recommendation is approval, yes. Yeah, I'm just trying to think that I'm not sure if it was going to be on the consent agenda or not.
The plan will be to bring it forward to you as a consent item at your next meeting for approval. Since there's not a lot of changes, just clarification, we just wanted to brief you on what it is that you will be required to sign. Yes.
Understood.
And before Victoria leave, one of my goals has been to bring the subject matter expert to explain it to you. I don't think you had Victoria present to you before, but I wanted to make sure you get to meet the subject matter expert when it comes to stormwater for our county.
Perfect. Do the municipalities that utilize county stormwater services for administering the regulations, do they contract with county government for those services, or how does that get structured from a working relationship standpoint?
Yeah, so on the erosion control side, they do not. So on the erosion control side, we do not have any memorandums of understanding. This will be our first. And that is because we are a delegated authority from the Department of Environmental Quality to provide erosion control permitting services on behalf of the state. So if the local government doesn't do it, we by default do it before the state steps in and does it. So there aren't any memorandums of understanding in that respect, and that's one thing that you will probably see more of these agreements come through with the other municipalities that have these stormwater permits from DEQ, because they're going to have to do the same thing to get a more robust document in place. So on the stormwater side, we have had these agreements in place. All of the municipalities that we provide the services for, we have the agreements, but they were enacted at different times. So I think Woodfin was 2013, Weaverville was 2007. I can't remember Biltmore Forest and Montreat, what their dates were. Black Mountain does their own post-construction stormwater, but we do erosion control for them. The city of Asheville does all of their own, everything.
Mm-hmm. So when a project is going through the permitting process, they apply for the permits through the town, but then we perform that aspect of the services, or do they apply for a separate permit to the county for those particular pieces of the permitting process?
They apply for separate permits. So they get a zoning permit from the municipality, and then they get a stormwater permit and an erosion control permit from us if it's a project that requires those permits.
Okay. So for the work that we're doing, when somebody wants to build a home or commercial property or something, they have a permit fee that comes to the county for us to perform that work.
That is correct. And these permits are typically for larger permits or larger projects that are disturbing greater than 1 acre. And we have fees set, and they pay the same fees that projects would in unincorporated Buncombe County.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? All right, thanks for the update.
All right.
All right, the next item is Workforce Development Board Consolidation. Tim Love is here to help us with this.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
We have a presentation today on Workforce Development Board Consolidation, and I'm waiting for that to come up. Give that just a second. So this presentation is following up on a discussion that Nathan Ramsey brought to this board earlier in the year. And at that time, Nathan was just trying to shed some light on current status of Workforce Development Board consolidation discussions. Nathan was very clear not to sort of direct or recommend anything, just providing just the facts and just the facts. And so what we wanted to do today was get back with you and provide an update. And we've got some details in the slides, but I can walk you through some of the basics. So on November 10th, 2021, the chair of the NC Works Commission specifically requested a study of workforce development boards across the state. And the purpose of this study was basically to ask two major questions. Thank you. We are on slide 2. Thank you. So those two questions, they're in your first bullet. And so the first question, are there opportunities to better align the existing system with economic development activity across the state? And then if that's possible, then what are the guiding principles that we should use to realign those workforce development boards? The chair created a commission that collected a bunch of data, and key data for that I want to call out here would be commuting patterns, labor and economic trends, to really understand how people are moving within our communities from an economic development standpoint. Based on all this study, a set of guiding principles were published and have been shared with counties through the Secretary of Commerce as well as the Director of EDPNC. So from the NC Works Commission, there was a request for counties, and so that's why I'm here today. And so the commission said, counties, please take a look at these guiding principles and determine basically, one, would you like to realign your workforce development board, or would you like to leave it as is? And so that's the question we bring to y'all today, just to get you up to speed. So how did this all even get started? What were the challenges with the workforce development system across the state? And there were basically 4 big buckets. In general, there was some concern that the existing workforce development boards weren't aligned to efficiently support economic development. And so when we say that, we mean helping workforce get to employers and helping potential employees get to those employers. Additionally, there was a large variation in the number of counties and the number of individuals that these workforce developments supported. In some cases, a workforce development board supported a single county and their residents, but in other cases, similar to ours, we have a workforce development board that covers 4 counties. Additionally, there were issues seen where the workforce development boards really weren't aligned with the local technical and community colleges. And that's a key challenge for some, not necessarily for us, but would be a challenge. And then again, the single county local workforce development boards, which I mentioned earlier. So those are the challenges. Based on that, NC Works came back with a set of guiding principles. There we go. And so I won't read all of these to you, but they kind of build off of those prior challenges. So for workforce development boards, first and foremost, let's better the lives of North Carolinians. Let's make sure that these workforce development boards are accessible to their actual labor markets, commuting patterns. Let's reduce redundancy. Let's align with community colleges. Let's make sure that everyone in the state is getting consistent service. And then ultimately, number 8, as things change, let's revisit the state of the workforce development boards. So those are the guiding principles. And what we wanted to show you here, one initial thought from the NC Works Commission was to make our workforce development boards look more similar to what you see on the right, which are the North Carolina prosperity zones. And so that gave us initial pause because as you look, the western region is a pretty big region and much bigger than our current workforce development board footprint, which is on the left, which you can see is that 4-county footprint that we are familiar with from the Land of Sky. And so our initial recommendation was, we definitely don't want to go to these prosperity zones. They seem too broad, not necessarily aligned based on infrastructure, needs locally, commuting patterns, things like that. So we set out to kind of assess the Land of Sky Workforce Development Board against those challenges identified by the NC Works Commission, and that's what you see on this slide. And so our takeaway, bottom line up front, a lot of the challenges that were noted by the NC Works Commission, we didn't really see present here in the Land of Sky region. And so I'll just walk through those quickly. So, are we aligned in an efficient manner? And from our perspective, the answer is yes. Our four-county region is linked by infrastructure, our interstates, I-26, I-40, it's obvious, but also our natural boundaries. Our mountains clearly create commuting patterns, but additionally our waterways, French Broad River, Swannanoa River, key elements of our infrastructure and our landscape that are aligned in our Workforce Development Board. From a variation standpoint, our four-county region mirrors the COG, and these are some of our most frequent partners in economic development. Are we aligned with our community colleges? I think it's pretty obvious. We work extremely closely with AB Tech and Blue Ridge Community College on projects as they come up. And then the final item, single county Workforce Development Board is just not applicable in our scenario. So from our perspective, when we look at the four challenges and assess ourselves, we don't really see the same problems that we might see elsewhere in the state. And then we wanted to think about our existing Workforce Development Board and the kind of work they do, and does it replicate kind of what we would expect, from commission's priorities? And so just wanted to highlight a few items. So in the last year, our Workforce Development Board served 24,000 individuals and over 1,000 employers. Numerous hiring events, but importantly, hiring events that kind of mirror commission priorities. So most recently, a $19 an hour and beyond job fair. So really aligning with strategic priorities on increasing wages. An upcoming work-life balance career fair, as well as ongoing career fairs at our NC Works community centers. Additionally, our Workforce Development Board is relatively unique in that they do a 10-county employer survey. This year we had almost 800 employers respond, and this survey is done in partnership with the Chamber, but also RTI, based out of Research Triangle Park, that specializes in this type of study. And probably most interesting are these strategic focus areas. And so these are specific areas where our Workforce Development Board is trying to not only align with priorities locally, but also really stretch the boundaries of what's possible from a workforce development standpoint. So one example is the Guided Compass program, which is to help build careers in tech and IT. The Inspire Recovery to Work program, which is an 11-county program that all started long ago with someone by the name of Philip Cooper, who I know many of you have worked with over the years, who challenged us to think about how can we get folks out of recovery and into employment and support them when we do so. Early childhood educator workforce, again, another project targeting a specific need in our community, getting more folks into early childhood education. The creation of the first post-secondary credential in partnership with My Future NC. And then finally, on August 9th at the Convention Center, there'll be the Western North Carolina Rebounding Stronger Summit. And so this is an invite to the Federal Reserve Bank, and they'll come talk to us about economic trends that they're seeing here in Western North Carolina and how we can get in front of some of those. So with all that said, the recommendation from staff, and not requesting action from commission today, but we could potentially bring this item back to the next meeting on August 2nd if commission desired. But in general, staff recommend maintaining the current alignment, which is that land of sky alignment, the four-county region. And to achieve this, the Board of Commissioners have some options. One, you could issue a resolution at an upcoming meeting saying that you would like to maintain the current alignment. Additionally, you can take no action and nothing will occur. We'll just maintain the current alignment without any action from you. Alternatively, if you reject staff's recommendation and you would like to see a different Workforce Development Board alignment, we could certainly look into that and bring some ideas to the board. The important thing to note, though, nothing here is binding. As time progresses, if we find that the Workforce Development Board does not meet our needs, we always have the option to request realignment at that time. That's my presentation. Any questions, thoughts, concerns?
Well, I would concur with staff's recommendation to continue with the current alignment. And I personally don't know that we need to take any action with it, is the way I would probably go with it.
But for clarification, do you mean not take any action to express our support for keeping the way it is?
Well, they listed that either we can formally do a resolution
Mhm.
or just take no action and we still maintain the current. And so, I mean, we could do either one, but I would say no action. And then if for some reason at some point there's a change, we could always address it at that time.
Other comments, questions? I'm also supportive of keeping things the way they are. It seems to, I don't see that there's a problem really to be fixed here. So, any other comments or feedback from the board?
No, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Okay. Well, it sounds like the commission's aligned with the way the staff are thinking about supporting the current arrangements. So keep us posted if there's more we need to do, but I think that sounds like we're on the same page.
Great, I appreciate it. Thank you all.
Thanks, Tim. All right. The next item on the agenda is an informational presentation on the county's new composting drop-off site pilot project. And I would just say as context, we heard a presentation about this at the Energy and Environment Subcommittee meeting, and we thought it was so great. We thought everybody needed to hear about this pilot project because it's really great. So thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. My name is Cassandra Lohmeyer, and I'm the recycling coordinator for the Solid Waste Department. Again, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak to you all today about the expansion of our compost drop-off program. So I wanted to first begin by providing just a brief timeline to give you some background on the genesis of this program. This program started initially with the city of Asheville when they were awarded grant funding through the Natural Resources Defense Council's Food Matters grant program. This is the origin of our partnership with the city, as the county was able to work with the city on many of the grant initiatives, one of which was providing a community compost drop-off site. The first two pilot drop-off sites came online in October 2021 at the Buncombe County Landfill and at Stevens Lee Recreation Center. We immediately saw strong public interest in use, as I'll show in the following slides. And so a little over a year later, here we are, and the county was just awarded $22,500 through the Community Waste Reduction and Recycling Grant through the State Department of Environmental Quality to expand this existing drop-off program and add 2 to 4 more drop-off sites for fiscal year 23. Pictured here are our 3 current drop-off sites: the landfill, Stevens Lee Recreation Center, and Murphy Oakley Recreation Center / library. The Oakley Recreation Center actually just came online at the beginning of July, so it is very new. So when citing this third drop-off location and when we are citing future locations, we are always looking through a lens of equity. It is a top priority for us, and we want this program to be accessible to all communities. And we know how vital the services that the Oakley Community Center and library provide, and so this is a large reason why we chose this location as the third drop-off site. And moving forward, this will continue to be a factor in our decision for citing future locations. So this pie chart shows the current drop-off participation by zip code. We get zip code data from every household that registers for this program, and this data is current. You can see that the downtown / South Slope area has the highest participation, and that just means that we are meeting that need with the Stevens Lee drop-off location. We expect to see that in the data. Over the next few months, we also expect the East Asheville participation to increase with this opening of the new Oakley drop-off site. And for future expansion, we will look into the 4 cardinal directions as potential areas for new drop-off sheds. Obviously, West Asheville, North Asheville, and South Asheville are have the highest participation in this program.
So can I just make one comment? This is an interesting chart. So the downtown, neighborhoods obviously are participating a lot, but it's interesting that it shows that there's almost similar levels of participation from other areas of the community, right? So a lot of people obviously are from neighborhoods that are not right there, are bringing their compost or their materials to be composted to the facility, right?
Correct. And so this is, it's definitely demonstrating that need, that participation, that the community wants this service, and it's up to us to kind of make it more convenient for them. So according to national data, over half of the materials that are landfilled are actually organic matter that is able to be diverted. In Buncombe County, the preliminary data from our waste characterization study shows that this number is actually closer to 38% locally. With our current program, we are diverting approximately 3.5 tons per month on average. As you can see on the chart to the right. And then this includes, I will just say, this includes all the tonnage data we've collected since the program's inception. September 2021, both of the pilot drop-off sites came online, but those were only open to city and county employees only. And so that is why you see a spike in October 21 when the program was then open to the public. One of the questions that we most frequently receive is, where is this compost going? Can I get finished compost through this program? And so Danny's Dumpster is actually the company that we've contracted with to service our drop-off locations. And because this is a free program, we are unable to offer finished compost to the public. But we absolutely do intend to incorporate compost giveaways at some of our grant-funded outreach events later this year. I think it is a really great example to kind of close that loop of you're saving compost, and it's being made into this finished product that can be used by the community. Another compost question that we get has to do with the why, and I wanted to kind of quickly review why composting is so important and why we should care. From a waste reduction perspective, it's extremely effective in reducing the overall amount of waste getting landfilled, and again, nationally, that percentage is over 50%. Many people forget that high-quality soil is needed to grow their food, and compost, it provides a rich mixture of nutrients and is an effective soil amendment. So it, overall makes our ecosystem more resilient. And from an overall climate change perspective, the greenhouse gas reduction potential is huge. So now a bit more about where this program is headed in fiscal year 23. As mentioned previously, we received $22,500 in funding from, and this is a mouthful, the Department of Environmental Assistance and Customer Services Community Waste Reduction and Recycling Grant. We plan to add 2 to 4 more expansion sites at libraries and city-run recreation centers over the next year. And this grant covers costs for signs, installation materials, print materials, and kitchen countertop totes to give away to the public. And please note that the county is responsible for covering all operational maintenance costs, including the hauling contracts for these expansion sites. This is how our drop-off program is currently set up, and this structure will continue with minor adjustments based on public feedback moving forward. So the first step is residents are able to scan the QR code on posters around the county, or they can go to the website and register for this program. We collect the zip code data and the number of people per household as metrics. Registrants then receive an email with the lot code, which is the same for every drop-off location. And then they are able to drop their food scraps off at any site in the county. So here is the same data in the pie chart, but geographically oriented with the potential expansion sites overlaid on the map. The purple stars are the city-owned recreation centers, and the yellow stars are the county libraries. Our existing compost drop-off sites, minus the Oakley one, are in blue. So again, based on that zip code data that we already have a lot of, I think it's 1,500 households have registered for this program. We will be targeting the 4 cardinal directions in the county when we look to expand. There are several other factors to consider when picking an expansion site, and I know I've touched on a couple of them, but I just wanted to list a couple more. So first, is it within Danny's service area? Danny's dumpster is pretty much the only composting company in town. So we are limited by where he is willing and able to service. We also are limited by the willingness of host sites to participate and host those actual drop-off sites, so working with the libraries and the rec centers. We also have safety concerns, so we prefer to site drop-off locations where there are security cameras. Parking is always something to consider, and also is the property, is it conducive to putting a shed or 2 on the property for the public to access?
Hey, before we leave that map, could we go back to it for a second?
Yep.
Are all the county libraries on this map? I'm wondering about Leicester and Black Mountain. Are they on here, or am I just missing them somehow? Just curious if there was some reason they wouldn't be looked at too.
I think we might have taken them off because they were 100% not in Danny's service area.
Right.
Yeah, I think we did meet with him in, I think it was January or February, and he kind of drew a rough line on a map of where his service area was at the time.
So these reflect those facilities, but which are potentially serviceable by
Correct.
Danny's
Yes.
group. Great. Okay.
So looking forward, we will open a 4th drop-off site in this summer, actually, which will be at the West Asheville Library based on the aforementioned factors. We will also finalize and expand our education plan. In the fall, we are going to open a 5th drop-off site and host a promotional educational event about the program and about composting in general. And then in the spring, we will assess the need for any additional drop-off sites and host a second educational event prior to the grant closeout. We are really pleased with the engagement so far and expect this growing program to generate even more enthusiasm and success in this next year. That is the end of my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
Yes. I got one for you, Cassandra. I recall in an earlier slide, you mentioned, I think, your estimate of organic matter in our landfill is 38% based on preliminary numbers. And I recall you telling us the other day that there's a study coming for our waste stream in a couple months, I believe is what you said. And I guess my question is, are we going to have kind of a definitive number as close as one can get with a study
Yes.
coming soon?
Yes, that data will be forthcoming. I believe our presentation is in September.
Cool. Okay.
That's our estimated timeline.
Awesome. That would be great to know, because it's just that's just a a huge number that we could, in theory, divert from our landfill. So that's really exciting.
So just to give you an idea, our facilities are currently accepting about 470 tons per day of municipal solid waste. This is, if we put it into let's put it into weeks, actually. So that's 2,800 tons per week. 38% of that is going to be 1,100 tons per week is organics. And again, very rough, approximate data. More accurate data is forthcoming in September.
So seems like a great project. I mean, obviously, it's very early in the process on this. If this if this continues to ramp up and there's a lot of community participation in it as the word gets out and there's more facilities that are convenient to folks around the community, looking ahead beyond kind of this pilot phase, I mean, could you kind of describe what do you think this system might look like in maybe 3 or 4 years down the road? Or 5 or 6 years down the road, if there was, if it's successful, kind of what does the pilot project potentially lead to? Or, I mean, I'm sure we'll be learning by doing what we're doing here, but just, I don't know, what do you potentially see beyond the pilot phase?
Well, the pilot phase is definitely, demonstrating a need and desire from the community, and that's, definitely being established currently with our pilot program. But we are also working in part of the waste characterization study is identifying priority programs for our department to pursue. And definitely one of the identified programs is going to be organics management. So we are working on that, and we will have a better picture of what that will look like in that report. That SCS is working with, that we are working with SCS on right now. I will say that moving forward, this partnership and program will, continue to expand, I believe, but it will be limited by staffing. Operational costs are minimal. The largest annual expense will be that hauling contract that the county is going to be responsible for with all of the county-owned drop-off sites. And then also, that staff time that goes towards maintaining and checking in and, working with the community, answering questions, that kind of thing.
Well, great. Well, I look forward to kind of learning more about how it's going. Anything we can do to kind of get the word out about this. I mean, I had kind of heard about it, but I think there's still like a lot of public awareness, to be achieved around this. And my hunch is that it'll end up being a really popular program. I mean, the Asheville area and Buncombe County have traditionally had like among the highest like residential recycling rates of communities in the state. And I think people will embrace this for similar reasons, right? They don't want stuff to go to the landfill if they can avoid it. But for a lot of just households, the idea of kind of doing your own composting, it's really challenging, right? Like, I mean, if you have your own garden and stuff, for some people it fits right into the way they would do stuff. But for a lot of people, it's not very practical. So this, I think this is exciting because it creates what seems to be like what will be a very user-friendly process for people to take their compost in. So it seems like a really practical solution. So I think it's going to do great and has the potential to really make a difference. So I would just encourage the staff as it moves forward, if there are opportunities to continue to support it and scale it up. I mean, the budget, they shared a little bit more details around some of the budget stuff at the committee meeting. To me, it seems like a tremendous value for what we're getting. So I think it's a great program, and I'm glad we're launching it. So thanks for everyone's work on it.
Thank you so much.
Yep. All right. I think that brings us to the Eastern Band of Cherokee proposal regarding the Clingman's, what's currently referred to as Clingman's Dome in Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And Parker asked to have some discussion about this, so I'll turn it over to you, Commissioner.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So it's a little, I guess, kind of a little unusual thing for us to look at and discuss. But it ended up in the news, and I followed along with the Eastern Band's Tribal Council last week, and I watched their meeting, and their discussion focused entirely not whether this is the correct historical cultural name for them, but merely how to pronounce it was mainly the discussion they had around their own language and history. So I thought that was fascinating. The mountain is historically very and culturally important to them. It is a place where they went during the Trail of Tears, I think, to hide, to avoid being captured. So that has more recent, in our terms, historic significance. And I guess the reason I bring it to us is, in short history over the last year or two, there's been some success stories of local governments and tribes working together to request of the Department of the Interior and specifically the United States Geological Survey's Bureau of Geographic Names, which I think is a thing. They're actually in charge of this, and there was a mountain out in Yellowstone National Park where a very similar action was taken by both the tribe and local governments to request Interior Department restore a historic name there. So that's why I brought this resolution to you today for your consideration. Don't know if I can answer any questions, but I can try.
All right. Questions from commissioners? I guess I have one. Are other local governments in Western North Carolina or the area also thinking about this that you're aware of? And do we know if the Department of Interior or Park Service have kind of started any process to consider the idea, or is it really at this stage where it's sort of the idea is being elevated from the Eastern Band, and that's where it's at this point, and hasn't really kind of gone beyond that at this time?
There's no other local governments that I'm aware of. I don't know. I think this with the tribal council just voting last Thursday morning, I think it's their intent to send a letter to the Department of Interior requesting this. And so yeah, I don't think they've certainly had time to react, to my knowledge.
Okay. And it is because it's within a national park. The Department of Interior and Park Service have the jurisdiction, in essence, to decide this is what we're going to call this place. Is that how that process works? Is that they are the landowner, right?
Yeah.
So they have the sort of legal authority to make this decision.
I'm not 100% certain on whose end decision it is, but I think it's a coincidence that the USGS Bureau of Geographic Names and the National Park Service and I forget the name of the tribal authority under Interior. They all roll up under Interior, so it all kind of works through the Interior Department. Whether it's up to the National Park Service or the USGS at the end of the day, I'm not certain.
Okay.
2 eggs, same basket.
And my question was kind of related, is specifically, has the Eastern Band requested, before we would do this, I would want them to want us to do this,
Yes.
is the way that I would look at it. So I'm supportive if they are wanting us to join them in this type of resolution.
A copy of it.
Yeah, I think one answer to that is yes. The individuals that brought this to the attention of the tribal council also brought it to my attention. And I guess my intent or hope today would be if there's consent to add it to tonight's agenda for our consideration. I think if that were to occur, those same tribal members would be here tonight to answer questions further.
They would be here tonight?
My hope would be for them to be here tonight to answer questions if we were to put it on tonight's agenda, as opposed to a future agenda.
Question I have, Parker, has the tribal council approved this?
Yes, that's a good point.
Okay.
Commissioner Whitesides, on Thursday, the 14th, they unanimously approved a similar resolution
Okay.
requesting the Department of Interior to restore its name.
Other questions or thoughts?
I would be supportive of us moving forward, but kind of echo Commissioner Wells' question of just, I think, making sure that we're kind of doing taking all the appropriate steps in terms of the language being reviewed and making sure that this is indeed kind of the type of action that the EBCI Tribal Council and community would be asking kind of neighboring communities to take. So and one way we could proceed if there's the will to do this is advance it to the agenda for an initial kind of discussion and then have the opportunity to just check in on that. And there may be it may be that it would come back to us exactly like this at the next meeting, but it would also just create the opportunity for that dialogue kind of between, at the community level and then also at the elected bodies level, just to make sure that if we are taking this action, we're doing it in a way that's sort of as helpful as possible. So I'm interested to hear what other folks think, and certainly if the desires for other communities to do this, I would support it and would be happy to support it being in the discussion tonight, or be one of the three folks bringing it forward at our next meeting agenda.
I'm supportive of.
Yeah, yes, I mean, I was going to, based on our discussion today, kind of inform them whether they should come out this way or not tonight.
And who would be coming to speak to the proposal?
It would be one of the two individuals of the tribe, not council members, but that presented this item to their council.
Okay.
You know what, I guess I would be more cautious here. I'm for it, but I think it would be good for us to look into it and then let's bring it back at the August meeting. Because, and look, this is great, but when people start bringing it and then we go right to it tonight, I need some time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's any.
Yeah, which is not, it's no, yeah.
I think
That's a good point, yeah.
all right, so it sounds like there's interest in considering the proclamation, and if folks do come tonight, they can certainly speak during public comment. We can learn more from them. But in terms of commission, further consideration, it sounds like there's interest in placing the item on our agenda for the August 2nd meeting, and we can put it on the regular meeting. So if the commission does want to take some action at that time, we can do that. And that'll give time for staff to look at the proclamation, time for any folks in the community who have opinions about it, whatever they may be, to weigh in on it. And so sounds like we might learn some more tonight, and then we'll talk about it further with potential for taking some action on it at the August 2nd meeting. Any other discussion or comments or questions at this time? All right, well, I appreciate you bringing it up, Commissioner, and looking forward to learning more about it. So thanks for elevating it. All right, Commissioners, that's everything we just talking about for this meeting. So let's adjourn this meeting, and we will reconvene at 5 p.m. for the regular meeting. Sure.